o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's a really busy time this last week of session, and the weather isn't helping much either. But we'll go ahead and get started. We've got, I think, a really good lineup today for our group. Last week on Wednesday, we had the Strategic Doing Initiative help us out with kind of a brainstorming session, and that was very productive and really appreciate the support there. And today we'll have a presentation from Caterpillar on their remote energy options, kind of a massive distributed energy resource, I guess you could say. And they're just coming from right up the road in Lafayette, so really appreciate the folks from being here. And then we'll have SDI take it over and do a competitive analysis review of what the competitive analysis we talked about last week. Then we'll be doing some mapping scenarios and exploring the future scenarios. And then we'll close up and talk about next steps. So I'll turn it over. Let me introduce the team from Caterpillar. Do you guys want to come on up? They were kind enough to host us a few months back. I think it was in November or so at their site in Lafayette, and it was amazing to see. And so we were so excited about what they're working on there that we wanted to be able to present it to the group here. So let me pass it over to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Diane Clifford. I've been with Caterpillar for 20 years now, and I'm based out of the Lafayette, Indiana facility. My role at Caterpillar right now is a business development role, so working with our end users and end customers trying to make power products work. So figuring out what the niche is into the marketplace.
Hi, my name is Kevin O'Connor. I'm with McAllister. We're the dealer for Michigan and Indiana. My team takes the products that Diane Teams makes and implement them locally. We're going to talk about some of the unique projects we've done here in Indiana.
Yep. So when people think about Caterpillar, they think about first, if you ask people on the street, boots are the first thing that they think about. Hats, sweatshirts, coats, right? But Caterpillar is much more than that. We've got a rich 100-year history within the corporation, a worldwide footprint. And if you take a look at all of the expertise that we've got, we've built it up over the years to have a great legacy. We've got best-in-class product off the line, as well as aftermarket services and a dealer network worldwide that supports our products. Our solutions are end-to-end, so not just selling the product, but we're along with you, with the customers for the ride of the product's lifetime. And we're always ready for emergency uses. So whether that be the Super Bowl's happening and you need more power, whether that be a hurricane, a fire, natural disaster, any sort of outage, we have teams ready to deploy for those outages to help with remediation with roads, construction, electricity. Worldwide, we have our dealer team ready for that. So in the last 5 years, we've sold over 6,000 products. And so then if we take a look at our products just a little bit deeper, so there's 4 million earth-moving pieces of equipment worldwide. Those are including discontinued products from our legacy from when we started. Connected assets are really big right now, and we have 1.5 million connected assets. What that means is no matter where those 1.5 million assets are in the world, we're able to connect to them, see how they're being used, see their operation, see how their users are using them, and we can have valuable information back to help improve our product as well as to see how it's operating. So if you have an asset in Texas, for example, our connected asset house will be able to tell you if the emissions are well, is it getting good fuel consumption, is the operator well trained? So there's a lot of technology behind what that connected asset does. $64.8 billion revenue in 2024. The numbers are just coming out for 2025, but 2024, we had a great year and great success, and 2025 was even better. Throughout our product line, 53% of that is US, or is outside the US. So we do sell US product as well as worldwide. We have manufacturing worldwide, and we have 17 different brands within our architecture. So Solar Turbines and Caterpillar are two that I'm going to talk a little bit more about within the power products. But we also have SPM, which is a oil and gas partner. We have FG Wilson, which is a smaller subset. MWM out of Germany are all part of our 17 brands within the organization. And then our dealer network is very important. Kevin comes to you from our dealer. Our dealers are regional based, focused on the region, focused on selling and being your service partner in that region. So Caterpillar is the manufacturer, and our dealers are our hand to the end customer. And we serve, we have 112,000 employees worldwide. Then if we take a look at our different manufacturing types, I mentioned boots and I mentioned clothing, but construction equipment, mining equipment, generators, turbines, and diesel electric locomotives are our big manufacturing footprint. So I'm going to take, the next slides are going to talk just a little bit more about those. But then Caterpillar is also really invested into our community. So $975 million through the CAT Foundation have gone back to the community. The company gives their employees a way to status match. So I know from me, I donated money to a colon cancer research as well as 4-H, as well as a scholarship fund for future college students. So it's a way that the Caterpillar employees are able to use the CAT Foundation and give back to some of the good initiatives in their own regions. Serving 140 locations, 24 countries, and always looking for the best innovative solutions for green, sustainable products. So power and energy, that's the new name of our division, and what that encompasses is how do we take our product and make sure that the power is getting to where it needs to go, how we help the energy economy, the grid, the utilities, how we can be a part of that. So the Lafayette manufacturing is the large power systems division. A lot of the product that we produce out of Lafayette, Indiana is going into generating assets. And so what does that mean? So hospitals in town have generators that are backing them up. Data centers have generators that are backing them up. So if the lights go out, the generator at a hospital is on in 7.5 seconds, ready to help life-saving events. I also mentioned rental power. You can bring in assets and have power available when is needed. But the future of some of the products using the electric power products as well as solar turbines, we're starting to look at how do we take our products and have a bigger footprint? How do we help offset some of the power plants that are being phased out? How can we use solar turbines, a 35 megawatt power solar turbine? How can we help with some of the data center needs in the area? Bringing in extra power to help supplement the grid. We can be a permanent asset as well as a temporary asset. So these are some of the products that we have in the electrification group. 270 dealers are electric power dealers worldwide, with 50 plus manufacturing locations and 35,000 employees from the electric power and energy division. So I'm going to dig just a little bit into the products on the right. So I talked about standby power, I talked about utility power, I talked about a bridge to grid opportunity, I talked about using it for data centers, but you can take those assets and you can use them to monetize. So our electric rates are always going up and down throughout the region. And if you have a genset that you have natural gas connected to, you can take that and you can monetize. And when the peaks of the power are too high, you can run your genset to help monetize your operation. You can also use it at at a facility to help level the power pricing that you have. So using smart integration, using controls, using our telematics, you're able to use the genset not just for the traditional backup power like we would have before, but using it to help optimize cost for the employees, for the companies, for the customers and consumers. So in our product line, we have small 50 kW gensets, smaller generation, and we go all the way up to a 35 megawatt solar turbine. These products are available throughout the US as well as through some of our other manufacturing regions. But if I take a look here, this genset right here comes right out of Lafayette, our facility. It's a 3500 engine. And so we have 2 main manufacturing locations, and so the gens from Lafayette go worldwide for power needs. Solar turbines are out of our California office. So a lot of the major products, the big families in this are all US content. We talked a little bit about the mobile assets can be deployed as fast as needed, and then alternative fuel. So natural gas is a standard fuel that's used, available through just the natural gas pipeline, just like you would connect your house to your stove. And you can use that for connecting a generator set too. Those can also be used in connection with a data center. So we're starting to see some new big projects going in, having high volumes of gas for our data centers using CAT product. You can then integrate those in with switchgear controls, breakers, monitoring software, all to make sure that all of the pieces are integrated properly. And then Caterpillar also has balance of plant external solutions. So you can add after treatment on, you can add a building, an enclosure, as well as combined heat and power. So downtown Indianapolis uses some combined heat and power where you have power generated as well as taking the heat loop, the water heat loop off of the engine to be able to provide heating and cooling to some buildings. So Kevin's going to talk a little bit more about some of those examples in Indiana, but there's a lot of great products from our product family in the electric power group. Slide. So these are specific engine models. If we take a look around the circle, all of the top ones, 3600s are also made in Lafayette, so that goes up to a 7 megawatt machine. And then a rental enclosure. So if you have a rental need, that enclosure has wheels, you can pull it up with a tractor trailer and get it to the site that you need. So from a 1 meg all the way up to a 7 meg are manufactured here in Indiana. Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. So it's versatile. It has to do with how much power you're needing at the site. So all of these, for the most part, are larger. Can you go one? There was the smaller ones. So like this, you could haul behind a small, like a F-350 truck. And that could be delivered. And I've seen McAllister when there's tornadoes. There was a tornado up near Lafayette. Power was down in the city, and they bring in some of the trucks to turn on the fire department and to have the fire department ready to be able to do anything that they need to keep the town safe. The larger one in that next slide, this is like a semi-trailer size. And so that would be used maybe like for the Super Bowl or for Lucas Oil when you need extra power. If you're talking about a data center would be like, take one of these and that's a 4 meg, a 4000 kW, and they need 100 of those, maybe 20 of those, depending on how large the data center is. So a little bit of both. So depending on the situation and if there is utility tie available, they may use a diesel genset. It would look similar to to that trailer, or maybe smaller for your startup and commissioning. And then traditionally there's standby assets. So whenever the data center goes down, whenever the grid goes away, you're running on diesel gensets. The wave of the future and what we're starting to see now is customers are looking for these to run 100% of the time. So 99% of the time, they're going to run a natural gas genset, 100 of them, 1,000 of them at a time for a location to be able to power that genset. That'll help take the load off and the burden off the utility, and you'll be able to run these assets at site, and they're permitted and available with our after treatment to run 100% of the time.
I think my slide's next anyways. But to your point, it depends on the size of the equipment and how it's built out. The base engine could be, I mean, number that's thrown around a lot for power generation, about $1 million a megawatt for the equipment itself. But that doesn't include installation, ancillary equipment. A lot of different things could add on to that and double or triple that cost depending on the installation. So it depends, because some jobs are, as we go through some other slides, are fairly straightforward and modular, and other projects are custom built and more expensive.
And then we wanted to talk about this product. This is our solar turbine product. Solar, not as in the sun, but their company's name is Solar Turbine. It's a turbine facility out of San Diego. And this is our partner company. It's part of our Caterpillar family. And this product goes up to 38 megawatts. So when you talk about how many you need, with the genset, you would need maybe 50 or 100. These you would need 10 to 50, depending on the size of operation. So this install is quite a bit larger and a lot more equipment involved, but it does have a good product as far as power out, and you don't have to install as many of them for your location. So we have a project right now that's a public project for a data center in Ohio that's got a combination of both turbines as well as the 3,500 gensets out of Lafayette. So it's a mix and match depending on the needs that they need for that install. It's yep. The mechanism is a turbine powered versus a reciprocating engine. It's the technology used to spin the engine and the way that the heat's generated. So this is just an outline of all the different product offerings that we have, from 190 kW all the way up to 7,000 kVA. So a big portfolio, a big product range that we could help meet any customer needs, and we compare the different product lines that we have from our different facilities to make it the best for the customer. And then, like I mentioned, some extra equipment that we add on. After treatment is what you add on to the exhaust out. So everybody is concerned about sustainability, the environment. When we add after treatment on, it treats it so that the exhaust out is cleaner than what it traditionally would be. So you've seen that transition in a diesel truck. We also now have after treatment on our engines. So depending on the scenario, sometimes the after or the exhaust out could sometimes at a mine site be cleaner than the emission or the air taken into the engine because of the way that it's getting cleaned up. So we're always looking at the best solutions, the best way, the best products to have a good after treatment and a good product. And then combining other resources that we have, the combined heat and power makes it a much more efficient option for you. And Kevin will talk a little bit more about some of those.
Awesome. Thank you, Diane. Like I mentioned, my name is Kevin O'Connell. I'm with McAllister Cat. We are the Caterpillar dealer for Indiana and Michigan. We just celebrated 80 years as a company, as a family-owned company, which is awesome. We've grown a lot in recent years, over 50 locations and now over 3,000 employees locally. So we're going to talk about some applications of Diane talked about the equipment. We're going to talk about how that we take that equipment and apply it to local projects. This is a local project with the University of Purdue and Duke Energy, a unique private public partnership where Duke Energy actually owns the turbine and gets cheaper electricity because they're taking the exhaust heat from that turbine. Just to circle back real quick. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. Turbines and recips, like reciprocating engines. A reciprocating engine is like what you have in your car. It's a piston-driven engine, where a turbine is a jet engine. So they're two different animals. And the turbines, just like you'd imagine with a jet engine, creates a lot of high temperature exhaust heat. So they're great for creating steam, which makes them great for a project for a university that has big boilers and needs steam throughout the campus. So in this project, Duke bought the turbine and then had a contract with Purdue University to sell the steam. So Duke and the ratepayers got cheaper power and the university got cheaper steam. Won an award. Oh, that slide, well, I guess kind of covered up the name. Not many turbines get blessed. But we did a project at Notre Dame, similar to the Duke Purdue project, except in this case, the university bought the turbines. So yeah, during one of the kickoff meetings, there were some priests nearby, and we asked them for a kind favor, and of course they obliged, and they blessed the turbines. So if nothing else, you remember that Notre Dame has blessed turbines. So that supplies about 13 megawatts of power to the campus, and a couple, I think it's about 100,000 pounds of steam per hour for the steam loop that's used for heat, and steam-driven water chillers and cooling for the campus, so they run year-round. This is another fun project we did with a local high school with 2 megawatts of solar, and the contract that the school signed with the utility was they would always produce at least 1.5 megawatts of power. So it looked at energy storage and our engines, and our engines won because of the total cost of ownership and the life cycle. So on a sunny day, our engines don't run. On a day like today, they're probably going to run a couple hours. So the school always has at least 1.5 megawatt of self-generation. This is a similar project, and again, I'm not sure why I cut off the names, but this is with the city of Fort Wayne. They had a really unique project that we're certain projects are just fun because they're different. We do a lot of work. We do a lot of power for hospitals and data centers, and those tend to be kind of cut and paste, where this one was really unique, where they realized they had a lot of wasted real estate in the form of stormwater ponds. So they installed 5 megawatts of floating PV panel, solar PV power panels, combined it with about 1 megawatt of energy storage, 2 of our 1.5 megawatt natural gas gensets, and some biogas gensets on the wastewater side of the plant. And we installed a control system on that. So the city always imports 1 megawatt of power from AEP. The rest of that is all controlled through our system, where it'll dispatch the solar first and the biogas, because that gas is being produced constantly from the sewage waste, and then the energy storage, and then the natural gas gensets to supply power, and then also recharge the batteries. So it's pretty neat if you're a bit of an energy nerd like me. Over again at Fort Wayne at the GM assembly plant, this project originally started off as landfill gas to energy. So it was deemed renewable because of the landfill gas is a renewable fuel source. So we installed gensets, and then recently we also installed heat recovery on those units so that they'll provide steam to GM and offset some of the steam load from one of their boilers. And then utility behind the meter peaking is becoming more and more common because of the long lines with MISO and PJM to install new power generation. We're going behind the customer's meter or behind the utilities meter and installing the 3500 series engines that we produce in Lafayette. This picture is of 2.5 megawatt units at Northeast RMC right over Columbia City over by Fort Wayne. So that utility is able to have those generators during peak hours to lower how much power they take off the grid and lower their import costs and their transmission costs, and also provide resiliency to the customers on that utility circuit if the power goes out. That's it. Questions, comments? Yes. Very modular, yeah. As little or as much as they want. We also have a group within our company that will monitor and dispatch assets like that for customers, whether it's a utility or a commercial industrial customer that has this equipment. We're doing a lot of work with utility or commercial industrial customers because they're looking at their utility bills. They're seeing them climb. They're seeing the cost of transmission going up also. So they're wanting to hedge some of their energy futures. They'll install units like this. We'll monitor them and also turn them on as their utility consumption climbs. We're turning these units on to cut off that top like 20% of their energy consumption, which they get charged for every month year round. So it becomes a huge cost savings for the customer. For the equipment, yeah, this is in that range. And then you have installation costs and your cost of fuel. And the nice thing about this type of equipment is it runs off of natural gas. So it's readily available, extremely reliable, and significantly lower carbon content than power on the grid. And we're having meetings with a lot of industrial customers and utility customers that we won't name in this meeting, but they're looking at these resources, looking at how do we put more power on the grid quickly because of how fast things are changing, how quickly loads are growing. We can do these types of projects very quickly, usually in less than 2 years, and do that in a distributed manner so they can get out into the specific loads that they're having issues with and address them without putting a huge central power plant in. Any other questions? Absolutely. We've done some projects very similar to this with steel stamping companies, not just in Indiana, but also in Michigan and Ohio. So a lot of it's usually companies that have high electrical demands and sometimes for short windows. So if they're firing up big electric furnaces or presses or have a manufacturing process that has kind of a spike where that's only like a couple hours a day where their electrical demand goes up significantly, they're a great customer for something like this because they'll get charged for that 1 hour for the entire year. So everything from, food and beverage companies that are bottling 24 hours a day, hospitals, and like I said, done a lot of stuff with some steel companies locally, and with turbines, ethanol plants have been really good market for us because of their constant need for a lot of electricity and steam. Pharmaceutical also is really great for this type of project. It is, and that's where generators we put into hospitals like IU Health or Eskenaza or Riley Children's Hospital, where we have all these generators. We installed thousands of generators over. I started with Caterpillar in '99, so hundreds of megawatts. Every year we install. Almost all of them are tier 2 because of the regulations and how they're limited to run. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to come talk to your group is there's a huge installed base of tier 2 generators out there that could potentially benefit the grid if we can allow them to run for other things than just power outages. If you said, all right, we're having a grid emergency that's 6 or 8 hours long, or say 100 hours a year to support the local grid, you've got a huge installed base already that is there. That would need some controls changes, but it's already installed. It's kind of almost a stranded asset for a lot of customers. But if they had an opportunity to run them for peaking to support the grid specifically for limited hours, you got a huge installed base just sitting there because they're diesel fuel and But there's a growing number of natural gas units which are already eligible for that, and that's where we're seeing a lot of action in the last few years is going more natural gas for standby, but it costs more. So there's that trade-off. It depends. We can do as little or as much as our customers want. We have some customers that do nothing but buy parts from us, and we're happy with them. We have other customers that we monitor their equipment 24 hours a day, like Diane mentioned. We turn it on, we turn it off, we dispatch technicians. We do everything that they would need to do as an owner for them. You know, that's just something that's part of a monthly fee. So we're happy to do everything or just sell parts. And the people who buy parts, we train their technicians so it's done properly.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Now I'll turn it over to the strategic doing folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Third session together. As a reminder, my name is Jennifer Hunter. I'm here with my colleague, Bradford Beach. We are both here from Indiana. As you know, we have a couple of other colleagues on our team, Ed Morrison and Julio Prado, who you met on Wednesday if you were a part of the virtual session. They'll both be here with us at our next session later in March. So we had a slight disruption when we had our winter storm later in I guess it was at the end of January. So we thank you for being flexible, everybody, and attending that virtual session. We've spent the first two sessions together really focused on where we currently are in Indiana. And today now, I think it gets exciting. This is the part I love, where we start thinking about where we're going. And so we're going to spend time today thinking more intently about the ecosystem in terms of the actors and thinking about who they are and what their needs are as part of the energy ecosystem in Indiana and why we need them. And then importantly, we're going to spend some time thinking about future scenarios and starting to design what those can look like. Before we do that, though, we'd like to do a quick summary and dive, really, and get your input from the competitive advantage. And Brad is going to take us through that. A couple of just housekeeping things. You can see that what Brad has passed around is a summary of the competitive analysis, but then importantly, a workbook for today. We try each session, because we capture so much information while we're here together, to give a workbook that you can take your notes on as it helps guide our process. And so we would ask that we collect those before you leave, because that's a way we can capture all of the input from your table. So if you would put your names on those before you leave, and we'll try to catch you before you leave the room. So Brad, I'm going to pass it off to you to get us started.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so the workbooks, we let a few get away last time, so please write your name on them and then leave them on the table when we're done. Thank you. Who was not here on Wednesday last week for the competitiveness assessment? Just two people? Okay, good stuff. That's okay. We've put a brief summary document together. You can glance through to refresh your memory. We're not going to deep dive that right now. We want to spend a few minutes first answering some questions. In the workbook on page probably page 2, don't forget your name. Okay. Yep, on page 2, there's 3 questions. If we could just take 5 minutes and answer one or more of those questions, whatever you want. They are asking three things. What surprised you? Or what did you see differently first? The second question is, when you think about your grandchildren's Indiana, what does the competitive analysis tell you we must protect and what must change? And then the third question is, the landscape is always moving. What external force or trend do you think will reshape this landscape the most in the next 5 years? Please take 5 minutes, think about that, review the document if it's helpful, and then we'll have a brief discussion. Okay. So we'll start with the first question, which is, was there anything that surprised you, or, did you hear something that was different from what you'd been thinking as we went through this this exercise last week? Please use the microphone for the
I think the discussion on workforce, and I know it's important, but seemed to be a deep concern about having enough workforce for the energy future.
I remember that one. Others, anything that was surprising?
Not so much surprising, but I also agree with John that the workforce came out as really important. But I also noticed that there was a lot about the regulatory stability in the marketplace and how important that is also.
That one stood out to me too. The idea of stability as a strength or an asset was that was profound. I call on somebody. Anybody else? If nothing surprising. Nothing was. Can I call on?
I think I was surprised that in an environment where there is a great deal of support for economic development and economic growth, still efforts to condition that growth, such as requiring X, Y, or Z from entities to come in. I think that is contrary to creating an environment that invites that growth or other growth in the future.
Did you mean for industry that has to contribute to building energy assets?
Yeah, and I don't think that there's a disagreement that customers or new customers are going to end up or are going to pay for the new investment. I mean, I think that that's a cost causation principle, but I think the emphasis that they're going to be forced to pay it or not receive service under certain conditions unless the mechanics are a specific way, I think can be problematic. I think that we can have those guarantees that everybody wants. I understand those to be important for a wide variety of the clients I represent and certainly the members of INDIAC as well, and for the state of Indiana more generally. But I also think that having the freedom to negotiate, the freedom to come up with creative ways to provide those assurances is an essential component, as opposed to having a predetermined dictate, this is how it's going to be.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the second question. When we think about the future, and we frame things, what does it look like for our grandchildren? It puts us on a 20 to a 40-year time horizon here, and that's an important perspective. What does the competitive analysis tell us that we should protect, or what must change? Answered that, so pick up the mic and go for it if you want. Can you go second? Can you go first?
Oh, I'd rather answer the first question, but okay, I'll give it. Okay, well, can I just answer number one then real quick? So something that stuck out to me, one of the things that we talked a lot was more megawatts and the need for more generation. But one of the things we didn't really touch on was keeping the current generation sources we have right now. I know a lot of the things that were discussed was innovative ways to have the supply to meet the growing demand. But I think we've got to think of ways to get out of the box. And one of the things that I think Mr. Alvey touched on was perhaps some coal plants being uneconomical and thinking about innovative ways to continue to operate some of those. And this kind of goes back to the workforce, is
if there is perhaps a public utility who wants to retire a coal unit, then maybe, and I know it's referenced in this document, the settlement that we had, my association with Duke Energy, to keep those assets online by potentially selling them to a third party, to keep the generation in the state. We talk about workforce, keeping the workforce. I'll just use an example. Hallador Energy, one of my members, they own and operate the Miram Generating Station in Sullivan County. And that coal plant was set to retire by a utility, but by Hallador coming in and purchasing that coal plant, we retained 180 jobs. So just that kind of goes with question 1 and 2 about the workforce.
And we will be moving into using something called asset-based innovation as we work through this strategy. And part of that is working creatively with the assets that you have.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Savannah. I think that's a really good example. And I was thinking about, you know, when you think about your grandchildren's future and what do we want to leave from our time here. And I think that that Hallador example is a great one. Duke Energy is doing the same with their Cayuga plant, and having that. It doesn't work for every coal plant, we know that, but for those that can extend, having them stay online and be updated, but then being additive like Hallador is doing by developing a gas plant, and then eventually the next step might be nuclear for a site like that. So, but my answer for the what do you want to leave for your grandchildren is about growth, and for us to really be able to bring more supply into the marketplace, but also be really creative and innovative about the financing so that we're not adding to the cost of electricity for the future, but we're adding so much supply that we're lowering the cost. Also, that our energy strategies have to be realistic. They can't just be idealistic and think that, you know, we'll build this technology and eventually it will take over, you know, kind of the promise of what was promised of renewables. And I always say, I love renewables. They are great. They're awesome for what they do. But we overestimated their ability to replace coal and things like that. And so I think that we just need to be really realistic about energy policy.
Excellent. Other thoughts, grandchildren?
Yeah, I think that there is a strong argument to be made around positioning ourselves in such a way that we are adding jobs that are fail-proof, right? There's always going to be transition. There's always going to have to be adaptation. But if we can find the jobs that are going to prepare our kids for the future, that's certainly an area that we're going to want to invest in. Same thing with our economy. Right? How is our economy going to grow, transition, evolve? Are we attracting the same types of businesses? What's happening to the businesses today? Are they evolving? Or are we going to be in a position where, unfortunately, businesses transition out? So what is that broader economic development vision? And then lastly, I think we just need to continue to focus on upward mobility. What are those jobs of the future that are going to allow our children to grow and prosper?
Well said. I would just add ensuring we maintain adequate planning in the policy framework to ensure the energy needs of future generations of Hoosiers. And within that, maintaining the flexibility and understanding that there are unique circumstances facing each provider in that, given that. So long-term planning with flexibility built into the planning structure.
A long-term plan with flexibility is what you said, I think, is what I heard. Okay, I'm going to put the third question on the table, but everything is open. Got just a couple more minutes. So think about something we call the dancing landscape, but the landscape is always moving, changing. It's dynamic. What external force or trend do you think will reshape it most in the next 5 years? So in the short term, what external force or trend do you think will reshape this landscape in the next 5 years?
So just as we're looking 5 years out, the political climate has been incredibly volatile. And I think that we've seen over the last 20 years a shift with regulations being pulled back, regulations being put back into place, regulations being pulled back. That truly affects the world in which we're operating when we're trying to make 20+ year decisions. It's a high risk environment because you don't want to get it wrong. And so that's how you see utilities thinking about it. But that's definitely an area that's going to shape what we do next. And then I'd also extend that if any of our folks around the table want to mention this, but the businesses, right, that we're trying to attract, they too are under a form of regulation now. Is that going to continue, or is that going to get pulled back in future administrations?
Right. You have me thinking about that asset stability. We have time for one more comment. Please.
Thank you. As far as external force, looking in the next 5 years, I'd want to mention that right now there's external forces, or maybe you'd call them internal forces, that are shaping what we're trying to do in Indiana as far as data centers and renewables and pipelines and other infrastructure, not just energy, but telecommunications and housing. And that's the local pushback, which we've talked about. But I think, that should be a primary focus, because that, stopped a lot of wind projects 10, 12 years ago, and then moved to solar, stopped a lot of solar projects. And now we're seeing the same kind of local pushback with data centers. So I don't know that we've ever really relied on renewables to replace coal, because it never got there. The local permitting was always a problem, and still is, and will be for nuclear in the future. So as far as external forces, I guess you could call it that. But as far as 5 years, it's upon us right now. So something we always need to consider.
And how do we create shared alignment around a shared opportunity that locals, people, everyone can support? Is one, that's how we might think about that. But
I
okay.
had one other thought on the 5-year out. I think that the large loads coming online and having that increased generation will be just a magnet to draw so much other industry and workforce. I can't imagine what it all will be, but I think there'll be a big exponential increase by building those large loads.
Okay. All right. I'm going to end the competitiveness analysis discussion, but thank you for your comments in the workbook. One thing we will do, we're going to collect them, but we'll scan and send them to you so you have that for your records. What's next, Jennifer?
That's fantastic. And even looking through that summary and hearing some of your comments today emphasizes why we're focused on this concept of an ecosystem and understanding that this is not something due to the very dynamic nature of everything that's changing that's going to be done in a hierarchical way. Collective action is going to be required, as demonstrated through the work of this task force itself. But the work when we look 20 years and beyond is going to definitely rely on the idea of many different stakeholders or actors, as we're going to refer to them today. And so we want to spend a few minutes diving in a little bit more into what that looks like, who those different actors are, what some of those competing needs and priorities can be. This is going to help as we move forward to think and frame some of the potential scenarios that you might all want to consider as we begin to develop strategies here in the next couple of sessions. So to do this today, we would like to break you into some smaller groups. Since we have 4 tables, would love to set up 4 areas. I think there might be probably just 3 of you in a group, which is absolutely fine for what we're going to do for the rest of our time together. And I'm okay if just a couple want to come over to each of the other tables so we fill out 3 of you. We just want to maybe make sure, and you know each other better than we do, to know that we have kind of diversity of mix maybe in perspective at each table. I think that will lend itself to a richer discussion. So maybe look for someone that comes from a different way of thinking maybe, or a different industry than you are. And if we could have 3 of you at each table, that would be fantastic. In your workbook, you can follow along while I set this up for you. And I'm gonna. Great.
Or you want me to move? You got it? Okay, John. Okay.
Terrific, thank you. You're good. Yep. You want to come here? Yep. Very good. Okay, good. It avoided us having to count off 1 through 4. The dreaded count 1 through 4 and go to your table. I think we did that last time. Okay, so let's talk about actor mapping. We're gonna actually assign each of your tables a lane to be in, just so we can get through it a little more quickly, and then we can do some sharing out. And so I'll start here, and you can see in your workbooks, I'm on page 3, just for reference if it helps you to follow along there. Let's assign, this table will be table 1. So we'd like you to look at energy producers and suppliers and transmission and grid infrastructure, okay? Over here on table 2, let's do this table 2, you'll look at regulators and government, finance and investment. Okay, over here in table 3, large industrial and commercial customers and technology, innovation and research. And then table 4 here, the residential and small business customers, workforce and education, and environmental, community and equity advocates. Now, it's very possible we didn't call every category that might be, so as you get going with this, you'll see there's a place to add in anybody else that maybe was missed, okay? So here's what we want you to do. Each group has a couple of different categories. You have 3 categories over here, so you can move a little quicker. What we'd like you to do is think through each of the categories you have, and there's a box below. Who are the actors in that category? And get specific. Are there, if you say universities, what universities are you talking about? Companies, regulators, who are they? List them by name so we get very specific, okay? What's their function in the ecosystem? As part of what we're talking about with energy for the state of Indiana, what's their function? Okay, their role, what do they do? And then tell us what motivates them. What's their need in this ecosystem? What do they want to get out of being a part of energy? Okay? And so think through those things through each of your categories. And then if you do have somebody at the end of this that didn't fall in one of the categories and you don't see it in one of the other buckets, you can feel free to add that as well. Because we do want to try, by the time we're done here today, to sort of have a map of who all of those players are. And we'll pull all of your individual notes together. Sound good? Who has questions about that? 1, 2, 3, and 4. And just as a matter of timing, you're going to have about 20 minutes, okay, to work through your categories.
I don't think so.
And I'll come around and give you a 5-minute warning. And Brad and I might sit in just because we love to hear your conversations. If we come over, it's not eavesdropping, it's just listening and learning. Listening and learning.
So just list them here.
Okay.
So we got IURC, IDEM.
Yeah. URC, IDEM.
NDOT. DHS.
Definitely DHS.
State with this. US CPA. DOE. Press. USDA. What's that?
Kind of jumping, sorry.
No, it's good.
Permitting.
DOE, some of them were US DOT.
Legislature.
Governments. Counties, townships.
Counties, cities.
Mhm. Leaders in government. We're forgetting any state agencies or regulators.
About economic development is.
IEDC.
Yeah.
Mhm. There's like the.
This might go into the finance.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, state would be open. That's more on the broadband, not the energy side, but we deal with them. I think we got government covered.
Yeah.
So. You want to do that now, or do you want to
Let's list for.
list the finance and
List of
investment?
finance.
Okay, so we do that in this box?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So finance.
Banks.
Extent grants.
Federal, state lenders.
Yeah.
Specific. I don't know how to be specific in this case, but if you know someone or someone's that are productive or helpful, or I don't know.
I mean, I can name in our space, it's RUS, which is a branch of USDA, and then CFC and CoBank. They're cooperative lenders. IFA? What's
Indiana
that?
Finance Authority.
Oh, okay. And a finance agency, a finance authority, okay. All right.
If I can count my members. So there's going to be. Wastewater.
No, but I didn't get that.
Improvement.
State
opportunities
revolving
out there.
funds.
Low income.
Keep going. Yep. Yep.
Not in like. Well, that would be. Yeah. What the project is.
So the state revolving fund, that's a state administered.
Correct.
Who administers
They're
it?
kind of interested in
Oh, that's within the, okay, got it.
knowledge.
And do they do low interest loans?
They clear.
Issuances.
Crossings, grants.
Plethora.
Several.
Oh, I did.
Investment strategy.
Federal for us within DHS, well, you too, FEMA.
Oh.
And then
DOEs? Yeah.
FEMA assistance under.
FEMA assistance,
Yeah.
energy systems is good.
Heap.
Assistance.
HC.
Again, housing and community development.
I mean, I don't know.
Try to get specific for this. It's helpful to be specific.
Well, so.
Go back to the, what do they do? And
What do they do on here? Well, like from a financing standpoint. Wall Street. But there's more, there's a number of utilities that have private equity ownership, right? Isn't that kind of a trend? I don't really.
liked by some, not by others.
Right, I don't know the entire universe, but I know that.
Slightly controversial.
I'll just say Wall Street. True.
We all have bond ratings.
Right, S&P and, well, the
All three, the big three.
the big three. Rating agencies, and then
There's just,
is there like a broader
hard to identify.
kind of umbrella term for like all of the various private equity investment community, I guess, is just say investment community.
Yeah.
I think, but it's the best I can do.
Yeah, I honestly, it's not my world.
Yeah, right. Okay, so now we're supposed to, yeah. So what do they do? What's their role? Okay, so we're gonna go entity by entity. What's that? There's, it'll be impossible.
It's in Illinois.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There are common needs across.
Yeah. Regulators are.
And what is
Role of government regulation.
Future of Indiana.
Just and reasonable. Safe and reliable. Affordability. I guess that's built in and just and reasonable. Balancing of interests. I don't know.
consumer something?
Oh, yes. Okay.
There's our consumer.
Okay, so just the same. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say to some extent with the federal, like environmental regulatory, it's combination of like conservation with DOE, conservation, environmental protection.
Thinking around what's possible.
Functioning markets. Just this kind of the role, yeah, just the role of all the government
Are any of you
entities.
in this industry, in this group?
Perhaps they can learn from
So
Mount.
thinking like this probably is a different lane than your.
Praying for it.
Okay,
That's
I
their,
think it
that's
is
their
kind
role.
of,
Yeah, with ecosystems, this is sometimes. That's what these people are. Yeah. How can we build these critical partnerships?
Yes,
How do we
yes.
find out where our needs?
For profit,
Maybe
not
science
for
make
profit.
them
looking at those.
Turn on their, yeah, money well through turn on their investment. Okay.
I don't even.
So I just wanted to say it's best.
Bailey's would be good.
There's a rabbit
Credit
hole here.
worthiness of their borrowers. There's no way they're gonna be able to read my handwriting.
One of the
Maybe not. That's we got
That's one of the
through.
reasons I don't do nothing.
Get a
Look at
bake,
that. I
we
mean,
need
I
to,
can't even-
we need a bakers association that needs to be at our table. Credit unions.
Yeah, they say they're interested and then. For the grant or which grant?
Yeah, and I think if you, RUS, CoBank, the CFCs of the world, they're looking to.
I think actually they're involved in the US, but.
They want to help our members manage their borrowing costs.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for just one moment because we're going to report out in about 5 minutes. But here's what I want you to look on, if you would. It's in your workbook for the report out on page 5. We're not just going to report out a list of who you came up with. What we'd like you to think about and discuss in your teams collectively, you know, who showed up in your group that maybe the rest were underestimating. Someone there maybe that stood out that you think maybe we need to think through more deeply together. Next, motivation in your lane, whatever group it was that you looked like, do you feel like is maybe the most ambiguous or the least understood? And it could be that just because of the way the groups went and the assignments, you might be at a table where maybe none of you were in that group, in that lane that you were assigned. So maybe we can call on some of your colleagues to understand them more. But was there anybody there that when you started thinking about what is their motivation or need here, I'm not really sure, but we need to understand it better. Susie?
We had one, so our categories were residential and small business customers, workforce and education, environmental community and equity advocates. And Tony brought up some interesting categories that I never would have thought would be interested in energy. And we hear them at the State House testifying. The NAACP is now energy is a top issue of theirs or an issue. And also the retired people's AARP. So those are showing how things that's not their main mission, but because the financial impact energy has, they've come out strongly in support.
So those are great examples. So the last would be, is there anybody that's missing from the conversation? Just in your discussion, maybe one of the stakeholders that you talked about, when we look at even this task force, are there important voices that are missing that we need to make sure that we're drawing on as we move forward to think about some of these strategies and the way that we understand things? Okay, okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, so why don't you spend a couple minutes in your team then figuring out what you want to share, and then we'll come back in just a couple of minutes and let's go around each group and have you share.
That's a good one. Ambiguous. Yeah.
Well, here, I didn't.
It's been recorded. Do we hear it? Do we hear it? Do we hear it from manufacturing?
Okay, let's go ahead and keep going down. We've got a couple of examples, excellent examples already. But who else, what other team identified? Was there a particular actor that you felt like maybe you didn't fully understand or we need to think about a little more deeply? These are a couple of great examples that this team shared with ARP and NAACP. Any other groups that stood out? Anything come up here?
We identified local communities and the importance of communication and education on the front end and leveraging support for major infrastructure or manufacturing or large load projects.
Okay, so they were missing maybe from your group initially. What group was yours? What were your lanes?
Government and finance, but the kind of like local communities is kind of a subset of that from a local government standpoint.
Good.
Is that within the government context, financing context too? Are you thinking in that about that? What do you mean by local community?
Well, I think we were discussing was local communities, I think, as like a subset of local governments, but I know there's not a direct tie there, but I think the importance of how it can be underestimated, just how important it is to do that outreach and education on the front end when it comes to all of the potential investment there is throughout the state. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. Okay. And who within the local government is important?
Well, all of local government's important, but all, essentially getting out in front of public opinion at the local level, which is a real force if you're paying attention to news, in recent months.
Yeah. Understood.
Good. Okay. Any actors that you want to understand more, or others? And I know, I guess all the three of these questions blend together a little bit, don't they? Anything else you want to point out that maybe surprised you or stood out that maybe the rest of us wouldn't have been thinking about? Okay. How about over here, this team? And I know you're doing research, innovation. Can you read your groups and then share with us anybody particular that stood out as maybe least understood, ambiguous? We want to understand a little bit more about what their needs are, or somebody that maybe was missing.
Yeah, so we said a couple of things. We had large industrial and commercial customers, and then technology, innovation, and research. And I think we identified a few different categories, I think, in terms of underestimated being manufacturing, but more where there's not a giant multinational company, but a group of smaller manufacturers where we have significant employment and needs, whether it be RVs or pontoon boats or some of the other industries that are well represented in the state. We also talked about defense installations being another one, as both large energy users, but also a source of technology and innovation and research and money, but that also are heavily dependent on energy needs throughout the state. And then I think, let's see, we also talked a little bit about some of the agencies that I think don't primarily work on energy issues, but maybe attracting economic development, where I think ensuring that they've got an understanding of our competitiveness is probably another one where if it's commerce agencies or the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, making sure they've got the tools to articulate why we're a great state for energy and where we're going in the future. So I think that's another one that
the EDCs.
IDC, yeah. And then I think we also said for least understood, we said data centers, not that people aren't intensely interested, but sometimes their motivations are confusing, their energy demands where, obviously affordability and reliability, but also sustainability and type of energy and who owns them when they start to get built, things like that, that sometimes can be confusing for the public. Did I miss any? Ag, we talked about agriculture as well. So more the large, as we talked earlier about like biofuel facilities that are pretty significant users, but also producers of other types of energy that sometimes I think fall under the radar screen of being major commercial customers of electricity. Producers, but also users, where they're using significant electricity and then maybe less so in certain other operations.
Hey, thank you. Okay, how about over here, table one? And tell us who your groups were again that you looked at. Yes, sorry, there's no.
All right, so we had energy producers and suppliers, as well as transmission and grid infrastructure. In terms of those that stood out, we talked about the role of merchant plants. We talked about the different suppliers that are producing the infrastructure needed for the utilities in the production of generation and or use in transmission or distribution. We talked about biomass, for example, entities like Fair Oaks. I know we touched on agriculture, but I do think that there are some larger businesses that fall into that category. Military crane came up in our conversation. And then, yeah, just, I mean, crane certainly, I think from an R&D perspective, an engagement perspective, there's a lot of opportunity there. They really kind of bridge the gap between government, economic development, energy in many ways. And so it's certainly an asset for our state that we shouldn't underestimate.
Not over here.
Thanks. Just kidding. Well, we talked about the following up on what we were saying a little bit earlier, politically motivated groups that are affecting local policy, and that is growing. As I was saying earlier, some of this is hard to define the motivations, but they're not always for what we're trying to accomplish here in the room as far as low cost, reliable, affordable energy. So that's frustrating to local officials and the state officials. I think there's a sporadic outrage is term that we came up with here. That's hard again to pinpoint and to address, but that's an issue that we discussed here. Joe, do you want to add anything? Come on, Joe. Lack of trust, yeah. So it's that the more this kind of resonates with folks, the more lack of trust sinks in, whether it's right or wrong, lack of trust towards government, towards corporations, towards folks that are seeking progress.
So several of the groups have talked about that or mentioned community. We've talked about opposition. We identified as an external force that opposition, we already see it. We're seeing it with the data centers. I live up in Fort Wayne. And so, you know, I know there's a group formed up there and there are at other places. You all are on the front lines of that. We're early in this process. It probably doesn't feel like it to you, but we're early in this process, right, of this task force of defining kind of what these strategies are going to look like. How do you view the task force role or the role of addressing some of this opposition early as part of the strategy for moving forward? It's coming up enough now. I want to address it just to see, you know, how's it being managed now? Is there a way that is being formally managed through the government, or is it a local level wherever those data centers right now are popping up, or how are we currently viewing it?
I think it's being managed as opportunity, and I think that's the problem. When Google comes in, they see it as an opportunity because either the community or something was provided to make that happen. And that becomes then a matter of, I'm going to use a lot of wrong words here, but where they're buying favor or trying to buy favor. I think we've fallen way behind in this collectively, and I said this at the end of the last meeting in education. I don't think myself as the head of the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission or the Office of Energy Development or the Indiana Electric Association, we haven't gotten together to put out a template of something that could be shared in a repetitive, consistent manner to everything from Rotary clubs to Kiwanis clubs to local chambers of commerce, and really gotten into education in a broad sense. We wait until there's that influx where it's coming into a community, the naysayers rise up, and it's, you know, spears and pitchforks. And I think what I have learned in a short amount of time, and even preceding this, we're going through a bit of a technological revolution, if you will, that is requiring a lot of energy and other resources beside it. And to get our parents, our friends, our neighbors, and the communities around us to understand that, and that we're in a cycle of change, which is not a word a lot of Hoosiers embrace, but we've got to step out into that, and we've got to begin to inform that, because it's coming not because we are asking for it individually, but because the industries that are employing so many Hoosiers are asking for that latency, are asking for that step into AI technology and what's coming next. So somebody needs to grab this by the horns and take this forward in a collective way where there's at least an undertone of understanding that I think we're missing right now.
Who is responsible for that? I mean, is there someone that should be?
And so I'll just comment. I totally agree with what the chairman said, that, you know, there hasn't been that coordinated effort, and we all may be a stakeholder, or we are all are stakeholders. And we have done some outreach and working on, in fact, for John's office, we'll be hiring some communications professionals, and that is a big part of what we're hoping that they can do, is leverage all social media channels as well as traditional media channels, where we can explain not just data centers' relationship to energy and infrastructure development, but also things like what's carbon capture and storage? Why is that important? And what does advanced modern nuclear look like? And why is that important to you? And then other innovative technologies, even battery storage. So there definitely is an identified need for a coordinated communications and education process on the energy front. But also there's an emerging organization, the Indiana Cloud Computing Coalition, that's coming together to do exactly this. And their members will be utilities, developers, and AI data center companies. And so that is what their mission will be. We can't get them online fast enough to do that.
So that's fantastic. And I mean, I think this is the perfect example to highlight why we're working in an ecosystem, right? Because it really is. And I was asking that question, whose responsibility is it? Because it's really all of our responsibility together. But coordinating those actions, you know, actually deploying something and doing something collectively is very complex typically, especially when, you know, there's not one person that's in charge of the other, and we have to find a way to work together. So that is nice that we've identified early. That's already something in progress that we can all get around as we think about the next steps. Anything else anybody wants to add after hearing the rest of the report outs from the different groups? Excellent. Okay. So we're going to shift our thinking to the future, and this launch of thinking about who all these different players are, what their roles are, what their needs are. And we can probably start looking at lists that you have of specific agencies where there are specific needs that might be in conflict with one another. There may be different things that government needs to do that's, you know, not understood by the rest of the public. There's things that all of those actors have competing needs and priorities in some ways, but there's also a lot of shared interest. And oftentimes when we start to uncover those things, that's where we can figure out where all of this collective action is. For the purpose of this task force, our end result is getting to this idea of what is that 20-year outlook? What is that 5-year plan, those strategies that are going to move us forward? And so we want to do a little bit of scenario thinking of the future. And I think that you received on email some very broad scenarios that we have simply to start a discussion. Okay, and so I'm going to describe a little bit. Brad. My business partner's name is Jason. Brad is going to be passing out just high-level summaries of these as a starting point, but I want to frame these up for you so that you recognize that we aren't sharing these to suggest that these are the scenarios that you're going to end up coming up with as strategies. They are simply discussion starters for us to think through 4 different scenarios that likely pieces of them could become a part of what Indiana might decide to do. But we'd like you to take a look through each one, and in your workbooks, you're going to see some specific questions around each of them. Now that we've thought more deeply about the different actors in the ecosystem, what we'd like you to do is take a look through the different scenarios. There are some question prompts there to understand it. You may have already had a chance to look through briefly what is there in the scenarios themselves. Each one lays out something a little bit different. But here's what we'd like you to take a look at. Okay, so on page 6 in your workbook tells you, can I borrow that for a sec? Yeah. So for each of the scenarios, after you take a look through those, and this is definitely a group exercise, so not meant to do alone, but to talk through based on, we talked about some of the actors already, but who are the actors that are involved in that scenario? And we have this set up where we call it the concentric circles, where we'd like you to think through, in the center circle for each area, each scenario, who are the core, who are the people that have the most to gain and lose, who are the ones that are actually going to drive this scenario if it happened. The middle ring is for who are those that are going to show up and be a part of it. They might invest their time, bring credibility, they might have funding. And then that outer ring is who is significantly impacted but unlikely to be at the table. This is just an activity for each scenario at a high level, just to get a sense of the system around that. For each of the 4 scenarios, you can work through that. And in your discussion, though, what we'd really like you to do is design your own scenario. It could include parts of each of those scenarios. In fact, it'll be a portfolio that Indiana moves forward with. It's not going to be one thing over the other, right? And so at each of your tables with 3, if you would design your own scenario that we will share after you've had time to think through and talk through each of those. And we will come back together probably in about 30 minutes. I know there's quite a bit here to discuss and absorb. We'll watch. If you're ready before then, we can come back together. But each of you, each table, if you could describe the scenario that you imagine for Indiana's energy future.
I just want to add one thing. So these scenarios are not the plan. The scenarios are there to constrain our thinking in a direction. So what that does is it puts us in a place to think through what might happen here. The second thing, and the second constraint we bring to the table before we start doing something is the actors. So scenario plus actors equals an opportunity, a risk. That's helpful to understand as we start to push our thinking down into what we can actually do. Okay. So, and what we didn't plan for this, but this is something we're adding at the bottom of page 6. If you have a scenario you'd like to describe that is different or includes components of the others, please take time and do that first. So you have 2 options basically. One is select from the ones we put on the table, or design your own. Is that okay, Jennifer? Did you want them to do multiple?
Yes, I imagine that you would look through each of them just to get a sense of what those were. So I don't want to confuse, though, what you just said, that ultimately what we want you to do is design your own strategy, your own scenario. And you can use those 4 that are there and think through it in a similar way in terms of the questions that are asked and the way that we want you to think about who those core actors are, those that are affected. Okay.
No, they weren't.
You have.
I'm just going to come up with my own scenario.
What different lanes would look like. Right.
Very
Pulling out.
good.
pulling out what we like and
Yeah. Kind of
eliminating what we
design your
don't.
own, design your own future. Awesome.
The vast majority of projects. I think of this.
Basically, continue where we are. The way you read scenario one.
That's how to make friends.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with all of them, is there are some assumptions. Ooh, thank you.
Remember smell?
What? Said that. No, quality.
Located. Are they talking about putting it? The energy. I know they're saying it does.
Two projects are on.
I don't think we can do that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Participants. Abby's not here. Also an active participant.
I think I was going to say,
Cole.
yeah. Trying to hurry.
Oh, yeah, I know it's a lot. It's like serious work here.
Mhm. This is the one that
I think.
Like you need to spend time on 2 and you can't get to 4. Yeah.
talk about until we come up with our own.
Yeah. In the end,
Seem to be the most realistic.
it's a, yeah.
What's missing is the, was that scenario 2? Was it?
No, that's for scenario 1. Or no, you're right. Yeah, you got the cold.
Because it went nuclear.
Yeah.
Which
Missing the
2 goes
bridge.
nuclear quickly.
Opportunity.
Scenario 2? Oh, no, I need to go to scenario 1. Never mind.
Order for self-generation for industry.
Ooh. Okay. You don't like it.
So you structuring through creating alternate regulatory. slow, steady growth, nothing.
Get there. I think 1 and 2, don't you think? Or, yeah. Gotta pick one. You gotta pick 2 because that's nuclear. I guess in scenario 1, we picked the utilities. With scenario 2, picked the data centers. They're gonna start driving.
Utilities, data centers, universities.
I think that is excellent. Have to be those. Yeah. Complex. Depends if you development of SM. Both of those categories.
Definitely active participants are the drivers.
So public that turn around and fire me. Did they?
So there you go.
Which cities are you talking about? been there, but I'm not.
Oh, you weren't even.
I have. Please don't make them transcribe this to Susie. I think it would be, and we have a nuclear gas division. He'd love to go.
Started the same as far as. For everything we've said, that's it.
It's primarily IURC.
Would the government,
Aldo was trying to do this last year.
I would think that you just want to put that forth and let people partnership.
Politics gets in the way.
Okay.
Let communities come to us and say,
Going to have the demand.
This, the loop project?
All of the above just makes sense.
Yeah, that was water though.
But that was the state right driving down, like, here's our site.
But everything is.
Yes, exactly, and it was not.
They want to do it differently where it's coming.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
Every one of the 40.
How much? 80,000 an acre or something? Oh, you do too.
I tell Michelin, I said,
Informed consent.
yeah.
Have more questions?
My choices are being.
Opportunity and risk?
Right.
If enough develops, I guess maybe I'm reading too much into. That's for 5 years. That's for 5 years. Okay, we become. What does it say?
Probably went to the fight. Another part of it was the double.
Looked like they were creating.
You know, other than that, it depends. Because around here, it depends. But there are, you know, possible. Interest. The gas, the edge would be coming to. Possibly see any of the scenarios. Here about
information.
but
Competing. Nobody's behind. Yeah, it does.
exporter. Thinking about new things is not easy for me.
What does that mean? Does that mean because you're compensating for the risk associated with becoming carbon free?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what.
And see, it's still.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you have a known entity in the management of not just the plants, but the infrastructure around them. Stuff, basically. Mm-hmm. That's what you're thinking about? Yeah.
It is a little, I guess it would be a little scary. I mean, the risk is a little scary.
Well, the risk, some would say the risk for nuclear is really low. But
Actually,
I'm not
to
challenging.
fruition?
Well, yeah.
So many scenarios. Right.
It's been around but there's more. But there's your point. I think is there's more to it than just the core technology.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't share those anywhere unless I have to. I mean, I guess this is a public meeting. You're gonna have to let me know. plan is to use, we use them to create control objective, kind of accurate description.
Oh, okay.
And then the workbooks are primary source, but the raw data.
Yeah, some of that might not have been building.
Fair enough.
Ready to report out?
That's good.
We didn't come up with our own yet because we have ran into too many problems with the first two scenarios. Oh, you have our own?
We've seen it, but it hasn't.
I'm paying him. I'm paying him to be my proxy.
Okay. We'll give you 5 minutes to figure it out.
All right, what's your grade? And those who are trying to.
Trump is president for the rest of it. But we're not.
More energy dominance. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. To everything. There might be something new come out.
Dedicated to.
Need more wind.
Racing.
Well, I'm sorry for storage.
And when it's good to be. But if we don't know what those different models are meant to.
Duke thinks it now has a.
So you have to figure out a way.
Not everybody was okay with pumping CO2 in the ground, no?
That great of a reason.
People hated fracking too. Sounds expensive. Everybody gets to build everything? That'd be okay. We'll see.
Got upended. Calculations in other scenarios.
some.
Okay, let's come back together and share across the 4 different groups some of what you discussed related to the scenarios. So if you looked at kind of the report out and discussion on page 15 in the workbook, we asked there, you know, what are some of the themes or the things that showed up across multiple scenarios? Were there scenarios that were incompatible? And then finally, what does your table most want the larger group to hear? So I'll use those questions loosely as we kind of go from team to hear a little bit from you. But we also would love you to share what kind of scenario your team came up with, your group came up with that you'd like to think about. And excellent, Brad will capture some of those notes as we go. So is there any team that wants to start and share anything that they discovered or thought about as they went through? And I know most of you didn't go through all 4 scenarios, which that's fine. We probably needed a couple more hours to do that as thoroughly as we wanted to. So wherever you got on it is absolutely fine. Okay, great. You have one.
So ours is kind of affectionately called like an all systems go scenario. And it combines 1 through 3 in different ways, where we would really build an energy focused economy in Indiana. And that it starts with an advanced energy workforce program that includes K-12 education on energy across the board up into, you know, really having a focus on it and making sure we have the right ecosystem, to borrow your word, of university to prepare students to participate in this advanced energy economy. And that it will help us to deploy projects because that way people will grow up understanding the technology and then therefore better be able to embrace it as it comes along. But that's kind of the long-term pole in the tent for that. We would look at ensuring that the state has at least a certain base of dispatchable energy capacity, then adding all kinds of distributed energy resources on that, where we're embracing everything like renewables, battery power, geothermal, solar. What else do I have here? Oh, the plug-in solar. That's one thing that came through this year. But any kind of robust distributed energy resource, even like our Caterpillar example that came here, to be able to really fully deploy all those things in meaningful ways that fit the need for each of those areas. To better do integrated planning on the state level. Like right now, the utilities do a really good job of their integrated resource planning for their regulated monopoly or their jurisdiction, and the RTOs do a really good job of their integrated system planning. But as a state entity, we don't have that yet. So we're looking to this group to develop our integrated state plan. Another part of the vision is to have kind of energy and industrial regional hubs where we find places around the state that want to grow in a certain way, want to have these large load entities there, and want to have large energy hubs developed. So finding those places and being able to designate and reward the communities that host those energy and industrial hubs. Did I miss anything, you guys?
One thing that I don't know that we had a chance to talk about, but I think we've heard and I would agree with, is that we need to have policies that stay in place for an extended period, or to go back to the word stability, right? We need to have some common understanding that whatever is ultimately constructed is going to be that is going to have that sort of dynamic for a period of time, and isn't going to be, you know, isn't going to be upended by a change from one person to the next.
Are there any core stakeholders kind of in that center circle that are not already engaged in this with you? Are there gaps in who we have?
Well, I think our industrial users are represented by Joe, our existing industrial users. Perhaps the new users are not part of this particular, like data centers are not part, but we have had data center developers come and present to the group. We have RTOs, both RTOs are part of this group, so I can't really think of any that are not represented here.
Anybody have questions for this team about the vision they've laid out, the scenario they've laid out? How about the other scenarios as you went through them? Anything stand out, any patterns, themes? I know that they kind of emerged, it sounds like, those first three in the scenario that you had. Was there anything else that stood out that you wanted to comment on?
I think in the scenario 3, bringing the state utility forecasting group, load forecasts, utility resource plans, and the state's economic development strategies all into alignment, having all those factions together stood out for us.
Okay, good. Great. Okay. Can I just move on over to table 1? Would you like to share?
Okay, well, I'll be honest, we're still stuck on scenario 1. We had a lot of chatter on this one. But I do want to comment on theirs real quick. Something that Secretary mentioned, state having a certain amount of dispatchable capacity. I think that's great to include kind of in a finalized plan that this task force completes. Just looking at scenario 1, I mean, one of the things we talked about is if the goal is more generation, more growth, more economic development, kind of going back to what I had mentioned earlier, how to keep more generation online, whether that's third party or whatever that looks like. Again, we're still stuck on the first scenario, but core drivers, I mean, Danielle talked about this in the very beginning, the federal administration changes. Today we have a Trump administration, tomorrow we could have a new administration. So those are always changing, IRPs are always changing because of that. And then kind of on the active participants, we talk a lot about just the role of the IURC and the OUCC, stakeholders that intervene like the Citizens Action Coalition. And then, you know, going back to overall, the affected folks are really the ratepayers and then economic development in the state. You know, one of the things I think I laid out on here was the current, the workforce that we have right now and some of the folks that are here headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana, more generation allows them to grow their operations here in the state. And we know one of our largest employers several months ago had mentioned that the number one thing that was constraining them from growing here in the state was power supply issues. So we just kind of focused on keeping what we have and building additional.
Just a few additional things to add is that we, of course, need to be nimble. We spent a lot of time talking about all of the unknowns that are out there. And we came back to a few that affects our ability to either generation and or bring businesses to our state. And so that's going to be public sentiment. So when asked, what is the barrier, it comes down to acceptance. What are we as Hoosiers willing to accept in terms of investment in our state? And that really starts with the ground up. And I think it's incumbent upon us all to help shape and show what that vision could be and how kind of a rising tide lifts all ships. And so that was definitely a common theme. And I think that applies to all the different scenarios. And then I would just mention on the utility side, we are ultimately responsible for keeping the lights on, right? And making those operational decisions. And I know there's some mission creep into there and, you know, welcome the conversations around the priorities and the direction. But did just want to reiterate that in terms of whose responsibility it is as that core driver. It's the companies. They're the ones who are ultimately responsible. Utility companies, yes.
So you don't talk about, okay, utility companies, the producer of energy.
Okay. Well, how about any questions or comments from the rest of the group?
I mean, I thought I would echo what Danielle said. We focused in on that continuity scenario with a slight twist. And I think we talked about ensuring long-term planning under that scenario, despite federal regulatory uncertainty. Prioritizing efficiency and economics, that framework for decision-making on generation resources, preserving flexibility with kind of the autonomous decision-making of the providers, which will continue to lead to diversified options for generation supply, using lowest cost strategy. And then in terms of the kind of this notion of being an energy exporter, I think that might be a feature of a system in times of excess capacity, rather than an end goal or an objective. And then maintaining an all of the above approach to where we draw from, the resources that we draw from.
Anybody have any questions or comments? I think I have this right, that you're the reporter here. Get that assignment?
For group 3, I think we also discussed something similar to Susie's all systems go. We called it the energy dominance scenario, but I think I was maybe going to report out a little bit more on scenario 2, if that's okay, the nuclear enabled export state, where we said for the core drivers, it would be, we kind of invented this term, the nuclear industrial complex, which is a lot of folks that are looking at creative approaches and solutions for waste, and universities, and obviously utilities that are interested, and others with a heavy obvious impact on existing coal facilities, with the primary agency driver being the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as opposed to some other scenarios that would be more state agency overseen. We had active participants being some of the other utilities that may be directly or indirectly involved, and certainly the regional transmission organizations. And then affected being a lot of communities. We would see significant differences between the workforce and the number of people and the type of work that they have at existing coal generation facilities looking to change to small modular reactors, and some attendant impacts there for different parts of the state that also would shape, I think, support or opposition to this scenario. And then we did, I think, go through at a high level some of the opportunities and risks, with one of the big opportunities being becoming a beacon for nuclear investment, and whether that results in exports or not, something that would be make us competitive, and also a lot of visibility. But there are some risks, I think, possibility of constraining growth, kind of the valley of death that we're looking at for long-term investments in technology that is proven, but also takes a long time to get off the ground, like nuclear. Maybe some opportunities in low-cost bridge fuels like natural gas that might constrain the ability to grow with industries that want to come here. And then I think we talked about success looking like a wide variety of different outcomes, I think dependent upon costs coming down and investments making sense in terms of economies of scale for ratepayers, and but certainly would help to achieve certain environmental goals and otherwise in this scenario. But I think we also discussed how we liked a lot about 1 and 2 and 3 as well, similar to the comments around the all systems go approach.
Any questions or comments for this group from anybody else? I'm really impressed with your ability to get all of that up on the flip chart so quickly. Thank you for catching that detail. We have lots of good notes though. So I'm really excited because when we come back together next month, you know, we've just started really scratching the surface of what's possible, but we'll start putting it into coherence and really start thinking more specifically. We do need to produce a report from this team together that talks about this 20-year outlook. And this discussion we've had today starts to lay the groundwork for what that's going to look like, that 20-year outlook, and then the 5-year plan, which will get more specific in those strategies to get started. And so what we hope to do next month, and I mentioned our other 2 colleagues will be joining Brad and I next month, will be, I'm sure, action-packed, where we will actually go through and start laying out more specifics of what that looks like and try to leave that next session with a lot better understanding and coherence around what we want to move towards for that 20-year outlook, okay? So as we're wrapping up today, and thank you all for your active attention and engagement today. I know the afternoon can drag on when we're sitting in a dark room and kind of going through all of this. But what do we want to just to wrap up with a few minutes? Is there anything that stood out to you today, or what was the thing that stood out to you today that you might share with us? And you could do that privately in your workbook. There's just kind of a final page for reflection that asks you about some of this. For example, was there anything that you saw differently that you heard expressed, maybe something that shifted? Is there a question or something that's still standing out for you that maybe we didn't get to? And then another question you might think about is, you know, what's one thing that feels really critical for us to hold on to as we move forward? Sure, and the way it is listed here is, what's the one capability or institutional change that feels essential for us, regardless of which scenarios we pursue? We'll spend about one more minute and then we'll do some sharing before we wrap up. Okay, let's just share a couple of things if we could before we leave. I would love to hear what some of you reflected on. I think I'm going to go right to question number 2, though, because I certainly heard a lot of tensions today in some of these opportunities, but then the forces working against us in some ways, the reality of where we're at today versus where we're going. What tensions did you see or express that you think that we need to be aware of as we're moving forward? What are some of those tensions? How do we grow and stay affordable at the same time? Yeah.
I think also speed to deployment. This industry is built for not taking risks and not changing things really quickly because it's a fragile, complex system. But it's just not built to move really quickly. And I think that the utilities are moving very quickly, but industry is demanding faster deployment than we're used to.
Else have anything they want to add? How about in question 3? Are there any specific capabilities that you want to call attention to and speak to that we need to on to, regardless of which scenario we pursue or move forward? That seems like a good thought to leave us with and ponder as we go away and come back next time to get more coherence around what that direction is going to be. So we are at 3:45, Mallory, for final public question and answer time. You want to come facilitate that part for us? Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It's been enlightening, and we really look forward. We'll certainly be in touch here before our next session, which I believe is on March 23rd, and we'll have a report from today, a synthesis of what we captured today for you to look at before we meet next time.
No questions from the online? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and input here. Our next meeting is March 23rd at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not sure of the location yet, but we'll get that out to you. And, you know, if there's further thoughts that you have on this subject, feel free to email Mallory and we can get that to the strategic doing group and they can add it to our report. But this concludes our meeting. Thank you to our online viewers and in-person participants. Bye.
Thank you, Clint. And
Abby.
Abby, great. Thank you.